Greetings, chess friends. Today we're going to take a look at the first world chess champion and his lessons. Here today, we're going to see 8 of his lessons to analyze the position, things you should be looking for, and that, of course, is William Steinitz. Steinitz was world champion from the mid to late 1800s, all the way up until he was defeated by Lasker in the late 1800s. Steinitz was really one of the first, if not the first, influential chess writer. Morphy, genius of chess, but he didn't tell anyone how he did it. He didn't write any articles or books about his incredible feats and how he learned chess so well. Steinitz, on the other hand, wrote many articles, newspaper articles, books, magazines, and such, in order to really get his ideas out there and then prove them on the chessboard. First, let's take a look at this position. I want to analyze, I'd like you to analyze, the viewer, to analyze this position as you would if you were playing. It is white to move. The last move was just queen, which was under attack, retreating back to d8. White to move here. White is Steinitz. And just try to take into account things that you might see as being important. So who has a lead in material and which side would you choose? Moves. Give that a few minutes and think. If you want to pause, go ahead and do that. I'm going to switch over to the other position that we're going to cover today. And from there, we're going to try to actually apply the lessons of Steinitz. Ready? Here again, white to move. And the last move was just a5, trying to get the queenside pawns rolling towards the white king. How would you evaluate this position? It's white to move. Which side would you rather have? What moves come to mind? What factors are influencing the game? And this is hopefully going to help you to improve your evaluation process, make it more systematic, as well as just challenging interesting positions that you're kind of forced to sit in the seat of the player. Okay, now what we're going to do, hopefully you had a little time to look at these. By the way, if you take it more and more seriously, you'll get more out of it. I mean, setting up the chess pieces on a board, analyzing like it's a tournament. Think about how deep a position can go, and I assure you, you'll benefit even more so if you do that. But let's take a look at the actual laws of Steinitz. What did the best player in the world at the time really think about chess? How did he think about it? Why was he defeating everyone? And I want to start with this position. So here are Steinitz's laws of a chess position, what you should be looking for, at least early on in the game. Some of these maybe don't necessarily apply to every position, but it's a really good starting list. And I edited one out, combined one, just to make a more concise list. But this is definitely the gist of what Steinitz intended. Number one thing, development. You know that. It's hugely important, and Steinitz put it on paper, saying the better developed player is likely winning. Morphy also understood. Number two, the center. I don't have to go into much detail. If you control the center, you are winning, controlling that with your pawns and pieces or from a distance, typically with rooks and bishops. Number three, mobility, open lines. Who has a better likelihood to start an attack? Who has an open file, an open diagonal? How mobile are your pieces is usually a good indicator how you're doing. Number four, position of the kings. Where are they? Are they in the center? Are they about to castle? Queenside, kingside. If they didn't castle, are they safe? What's up with the kings? Nothing is more important in chess. Number five, weak and strong squares. This one I would say is probably getting to be a little more advanced. Most players that are newer to chess or just starting out, young players, you really probably are not looking at key squares. Where could my pieces land? Where are the squares that are never going to be guarded again? And which ones are really just generally important to the strategy of the game? Number six, pawn structure. I always mention to students that the more you pay attention to your pawns, the better chess player you are. You'll see strong players will almost always seem to have good structure, and this guides a lot of the decisions that they make. Number seven, queenside pawn majority. Now, this one really is not applicable to all positions, and I almost took this one off the list, but I thought it was a good advanced topic that, again, a lot of players are likely not thinking about. Those queenside majorities of pawns could produce a passed pawn, On the queen side, even more powerful as the kings are usually not there in the endgame. And number 8, the minor pieces. That's pretty general, the 4 minor pieces, knights and bishops. But just understanding how they are placed, again, going back to mobility or open lines for bishops especially, how are the minor pieces? How healthy are they? Or if they're really not having much success, then how can we fix that? But just assessing the minor pieces is going to help you, okay? Development, the center, mobility and open lines, positions of the king, weak and strong squares, pawn structure, queenside pawn majority, and minor pieces. These are the laws of Steinitz, the first champion. Now, with that list on our mind, let's take a closer look at the position we started with here. Steinitz, with the white pieces, how would you rate his development in comparison to black? Who's more developed? Close, but I think white gets a slight edge. The center. This pawn really is advanced past the middle of the board, is the furthest advanced pawn. I think slight edge to white again. Mobility and open lines. Well, one thing that I really hope stood out to you was this rook. Clearly the best rook on the board in owning that open C file, which plays a huge part in this game. Definitely advantage white. Position of the kings, we can say that's equal. It is white to move here, and castling is pretty natural for both, although the next white move even disrupts black from castling. Number 5, weak and strong squares. If you didn't really think of this during your original analysis, give it a try now. What squares do you think stand out? What squares could be of importance later? In my opinion, it would really be these squares, and that's going to lead us to really the moment that made this game so famous. Okay, we're going to talk about that soon. How about pawn structure? Again, with this one, pretty equal, but I think a slight edge to white. No glaring weaknesses. We do have a weak pawn here, which is about to get attacked. Number 7, queenside majority, not happening in this one. You can just cross that one off the list as a neutral. In the minor pieces, well, this bishop really stands out as being very poorly placed. The other bishop also not much of a future. The knight, nowhere to really go there or there. So actually the minor pieces are clearly in white's favor. And as we go down the list, we see everything is either slightly in white's favor or completely in white's favor. So using that analysis, we can understand, okay, white is actually winning this game, giving each of those topics a little attention. Think about some candidate moves here. I hinted at it that this pawn was a weakness, and the best computer move today was the one that Steinitz played, knight d4. That threatens the weak pawn. We could have castled, we could have done a few things, but we threatened the pawn. Black played the best move, but not a fun move. Like I said, disrupting the castling of black, putting a knight in the way. You cannot castle, of course. And improving, we move forward, they move backward. So an improvement for white. Castles. h5, not a move that helps much. Okay, and now we start a nice maneuver. Remember we mentioned these squares. Especially c5 feels like a good one, but also a5. And you can imagine even this knight hopping to those squares very easily. Imagine a move here like knight b3, which looks really good. One of the minor pieces can land there. We're guarded by the pawn, the rook, and the other minor piece. Excellent prospects for white there. But he plays knight c3. Let's just keep that knight in mind. By the way, when we rewind a moment, this is our worst piece, the knight. So a good chess concept, make your worst piece better. If you keep doing that, your position is getting better. Here, what made this game famous is the next maneuver. And Steinitz obviously had eyes on these squares. I'll just get right to it. Knight b1. How many of us would have played knight b1 there? Shocking. This really had a great effect on me. When I saw this for the first time many years ago, I thought, wow, this is sensational. You just have to think about where to get your knight, and you can make some long journey to get there. But it's more of an investment. Like we're putting 1, 2, 3, and a fourth move. We're investing those moves. We're using those moves now, hoping that later we get something even better out of it. So remember that knight. g6, no danger. Knight d2. Knight b3. And knight a5. Do you see 5 consecutive moves? Our knight went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same knight, long journey, great square. But Chris, a knight on the rim is great. Don't worry about it. Every rule can be broken. We're threatening, we're guarded. This is just an outpost. The whole battle is taking place on the queen side here. That should be clear. Hardly anything is happening on the king side. Rook takes rook. We mentioned open lines as a key to a chess position. The c file is the only open line. And there with queen c2, white says, I'm keeping this open file. You're not going to challenge me on that one. And again, making our pieces better. Knight c6, that does potentially trade away the very bad black bishop on a8. And he ends up taking the one on d8. But I think it's more about just this invasion on the c file. The bishop for black was guarding c7. So now that it's gone, we can invade. Here, another improving move. I like this type of maneuver. But when the queens do get traded, again, everything coming up in white's favor. That beautiful knight maneuver, the persistent weak pawns. Here, bishop c5 and bishop d6, and black resigns. Nearly zugzwang. You can hardly do anything. This pawn is hanging. If you move your knight, it's nearly checkmate after a few rook moves. The bishop buried, the rook buried, the pawn structure kind of closing all of black's roads down. A beautiful positional game. And really, Steinitz showed his tactical prowess in his early years and his real positional skills as he got older and older. Yeah, what a game and what a maneuver, that knight b1. I hope you remember that one. Look for the key squares and try to get your pieces to those squares. Let's take a look at the second position and game for today. Again, thinking about the Steinitz's laws of evaluating a chess position, development. Again, I'd probably give a slight edge to white, but maybe that one close to equal. The center, again, white has a slightly better pawn structure, further advanced, more pawns in the center. Mobility and open lines. This one's a big one. And if you're thinking open line, I don't see any open files. Well, don't forget about diagonals. And notice the dark squared bishop is missing from this construction for black. And so we are actually able to get on the diagonal. And in order to open a file, we'll need to push these pawns. So mobility, I think, definitely in white's favor, and open lines in white's favor. The pieces are not so mobile for black. Position of the kings. Well, interesting that they're on opposite sides of the board. We know that means an exciting game, a dramatic fight usually. You can see black is getting ready to pawn storm. Number 5, weak and strong squares. What squares really stand out? Well, to me, it's got to be this dark squares around the king. Without the bishop in there, those are always vulnerable, and all the better when we have the bishop that can take advantage, and we're about to see that. Number 6, pawn structure. Not as big a deal in this one. Again, white has good pawns, but this one you can tell is going to be a tactical battle. Again, when the kings are on opposite sides of the board, that's usually the case. Pawn structure matters less and less if there's a wild fight going on. Queenside pawn majority. Well, back to what we said. The pawns clearly are moving. It is a majority, but likely to end with a checkmate and not a promotion in this type of game. And number 8, the minor pieces. Definitely minor pieces are in white's favor. This bishop and knight are really stuck, as well as this knight. Just no good moves, clumsy. And the white minor pieces actually have some nice inroads. Both pieces can get to d4, g5, h6, and this bishop may wake up one day should the e-pawn move. So advantage white again. Let's see the game. This game actually has quite a nice finish to it. So this first move was bishop d4. Remember, I think open lines, and don't forget about diagonals. f6. Not a terrible move, actually, but aesthetically not so nice. You're kind of accepting defense. Queen h6, Steinitz on the attack. b4. This game is exciting. When the kings are on opposite sides, it is a race to get to the king. g5, a good attacking move, trying again to open diagonals. f5 really is a crucial mistake, allowing captures, but Steinitz plays an accurate move here in that bishop f6, maybe intending, well, maybe assuming a sacrifice might come. Black moves the queen. And now the king side is getting busted down. We are breaking into the king side here. The next move really sends shockwave through the game. G6. G6. Wow. Couple options here. Let's go through the easy ones first. Queen takes. That's checkmate. Easy enough. How about if pawn takes here? Another big mistake, and answered quickly by knight g5, threatening the queen as well as checkmate. The real game went queen takes g6, and simple but effective move bishop takes g7. The game went queen takes queen and queen takes queen. Of course, if you recapture that, you're lining your king and queen up, and simple rook g1, rook hg1 will just net the queen. So queen takes h6, bishop takes h6, and after the dust settles, white is just up a minor piece. He quickly converts this. I'll just walk through the moves. Check, capture, capture, check, rook e1, and resigns here. Really, the invasion onto the 6th or 7th ranks is just going to be decisive, and we're just up a rook. So far too much, and a fantastic game by Steinitz. So hopefully this list will help you. Write it down, print it out, whatever you need to do, but remember those things, and it will guide you until that process becomes automatic. When a strong player just looks, they say, we're winning. But maybe you need a little more systematic approach. You see the list, and eventually you'll start to internalize those things, and you say, oh, wow, they really have better pawn structure. Or, wow, their development is far superior. So those things you always hear about, but really you need to keep them on your mind at all times, especially in the early phases of the game. You don't need to be analyzing development in an endgame, so I would really use those all in the opening and middle game phases. Thank you all very much for watching. This has been a fun video, I hope educational, and look for more chess content to help you improve, and drop any comments if you'd like to see something, questions you have. Happy to help answer anything you'd like to know about chess.